The mathematics of quantum space class proved to be less challenging than Tom had expected. Numbers, it seemed, were a truly universal language. What really worried him was the upcoming lunch period. He had been warned about this. Eating in public could be problematic. As Tom entered the cafeteria, he noticed how the room was divided into different atmospheric sections. Some areas were filled with thick green gases, while others contained bubbling liquids where aquatic species ate. He made his way to the standard atmosphere section, his lunch container clutched tightly in his dampener-covered hands. He found an empty table and sat down, the reinforced chair creaking slightly under his Earth-normal weight. Opening his lunch container, he pulled out a sandwich, an apple, and a protein bar. Simple Earth food that felt like home. A gentle voice spoke from behind him. "Is that processed plant and animal matter?" Tom turned to see a blue-skinned alien with large, curious eyes. Unlike the others who kept their distance, this one actually moved closer to inspect his food. "Yes," Tom replied carefully. "Would you like to sit down?" "I'm Tom." "I'm Blue," the alien said, settling into a seat across from him. Its skin rippled with patterns of lighter blue, which Tom guessed might be their way of showing excitement. "I studied Earth species. Is it true you can digest both plant and animal proteins in the same meal?" Before Tom could answer, he bit into his sandwich. Several nearby aliens made high-pitched sounds of distress as they watched him chew. One even extended its protective membrane. "Oh yes," Blue said, translating the reactions. "They're shocked by your grinding mouth bones. Teeth, correct? Most species here dissolve their nutrients externally." Tom swallowed self-consciously. "Maybe I should eat somewhere private." "No, no." Blue waved two of its upper limbs. "They need to learn about other species. That's why we have an exchange program." Blue turned to address the onlookers. "Humans evolved as pursuit predators. They need high-energy food to maintain their dense muscle structure." This explanation seemed to make things worse. A group of floating gas bag aliens quickly drifted away from their table, their colors changing to what Tom assumed was their species' equivalent of pale. A pursuit predator. It just keeps chasing until the prey is exhausted. One student whispered too loudly. "I heard they can repair broken bones while still moving," another added. "And they drink water that falls from their sky." Tom finished his lunch as quickly as possible, trying to ignore the growing crowd of whispers. Blue remained at the table, asking questions about Earth and sharing facts about their own homeworld, a low-gravity planet where most life forms floated through the air currents. As the lunch period ended, Blue followed Tom into the hallway. "Don't worry about them," Blue said. "They're just not used to, well, a monster," Tom suggested with a slight smile. "A Deathworlder," Blue corrected. "But I think it's fascinating. Did you know you're the physically strongest student in our year? Even with the dampeners, your baseline strength exceeds most species here." Tom's smile faded. "That's exactly what I'm worried about. Gem class is next." "Oh yes." Blue's skin rippled with bright patterns. "I heard the teachers had to recalibrate all the equipment. They're not used to handling someone with your density and strength. Most species here evolved in low-gravity or liquid environments." As they walked to the gym, Tom noticed the dampeners on his wrists were blinking faster. The constant effort of restraining his Earth-normal strength was pushing them to work harder. He just hoped they would hold up during physical activity. "Will you be in gym class too?" Tom asked Blue. "Of course. All students participate. Don't worry, the gravity fields are adjustable for each species." Blue paused, their skin shifting to a darker shade. "Though I should mention, you might want to be careful. Reed will be there." "Reed?" "Top athlete in our year. Very competitive. And not very happy about a Deathworlder joining the class." Blue's skin rippled with concern. "Just try not to show your full strength, okay?" Tom nodded, his stomach tightening with anxiety. He'd faced plenty of challenges already today, but something told him gym class would be the biggest test yet. The mathematics of quantum space class proved to be less challenging than Tom had expected. Numbers, it seemed, were a truly universal language. What really worried him was the upcoming lunch period. He had been warned about this. Eating in public could be problematic. As Tom entered the cafeteria, he noticed how the room was divided into different atmospheric sections. Some areas were filled with thick, green gases, while others contained bubbling liquids where aquatic species ate. He made his way to the standard atmosphere section, his lunch container clutched tightly in his dampener-covered hands. He found an empty table and sat down, the reinforced chair creaking slightly under his Earth-normal weight. Opening his lunch container, he pulled out a sandwich, an apple, and a protein bar. Simple Earth food that felt like home. A gentle voice spoke from behind him. "Is that processed plant and animal matter?" Tom turned to see a blue-skinned alien with large, curious eyes. Unlike the others who kept their distance, this one actually moved closer to inspect his food. "Yes," Tom replied carefully. "Would you like to sit down?" "I'm Tom." "I'm Blue," the alien said, settling into a seat across from him. Its skin rippled with patterns of lighter blue, which Tom guessed might be their way of showing excitement. "I've studied Earth species. Is it true you can digest both plant and animal proteins in the same meal?" Before Tom could answer, he bit into his sandwich. Several nearby aliens made high-pitched sounds of distress as they watched him chew. One even extended its protective membrane. "Oh yes," Blue said, translating the reactions. "They're shocked by your grinding mouth bones." "Teeth, correct. Most species here dissolve their nutrients externally." Tom swallowed self-consciously. "Maybe I should eat somewhere private." "No, no." Blue waved two of its upper limbs. "They need to learn about other species. That's why we have an exchange program." Blue turned to address the onlookers. "Humans evolved as pursuit predators. They need high-energy food to maintain their dense muscle structure." This explanation seemed to make things worse. A group of floating gas-bag aliens quickly drifted away from their table, their colors changing to what Tom assumed was their species' equivalent of pale. A pursuit predator. It just keeps chasing until the prey is exhausted. One student whispered too loudly. "I heard they can repair broken bones while still moving," another added. "And they drink water that falls from their sky." Tom finished his lunch as quickly as possible, trying to ignore the growing crowd of whispers. Blue remained at the table, asking questions about Earth and sharing facts about their own homeworld, a low-gravity planet where most life forms floated through the air currents. As the lunch period ended, Blue followed Tom into the hallway. "Don't worry about them," Blue said. "They're just not used to, well, a monster," Tom suggested with a slight smile. "A Deathworlder," Blue corrected. "But I think it's fascinating. Did you know you're the physically strongest student in our year? Even with the dampeners, your baseline strength exceeds most species here." Tom's smile faded. "That's exactly what I'm worried about. Gem class is next." "Oh yes." Blue's skin rippled with bright patterns. "I heard the teachers had to recalibrate all the equipment. They're not used to handling someone with your density and strength. Most species here evolved in low-gravity or liquid environments." As they walked to the gym, Tom noticed the dampeners on his wrists were blinking faster. The constant effort of restraining his Earth-normal strength was pushing them to work harder. He just hoped they would hold up during physical activity. "Will you be in gym class too?" Tom asked Blue. "Of course. All students participate. Don't worry, the gravity fields are adjustable for each species." Blue paused, their skin shifting to a darker shade. "Though I should mention, you might want to be careful. Reed will be there." "Reed?" "Top athlete in our year, very competitive, and not very happy about a Deathworlder joining the class." Blue's skin rippled with concern. "Just try not to show your full strength, okay?" Tom nodded, his stomach tightening with anxiety. He'd faced plenty of challenges already today, but something told him gym class would be the biggest test yet. The school's gymnasium was unlike anything Tom had ever seen. The massive chamber stretched at least 5 stories high, with various gravity fields shimmering in different colors throughout the space. Some areas had platforms floating in zero gravity, while others featured what looked like obstacle courses designed for multiple forms of movement. Professor Gray stood at the entrance, now wearing what appeared to be a sports uniform, a shimmering suit that rippled with every movement. "Welcome to physical education," they announced, their translucent skin pulsing with professional patterns. "Today we'll be doing basic fitness assessments." Tom noticed Reed immediately. The alien athlete stood apart from the others, their silver-scaled body gleaming under the lights. Reed's 4 arms were toned, and their tail showed the kind of balance that came from years of training. "We'll start with the low-gravity agility course," Professor Gray announced. "Reed, would you demonstrate?" Reed moved with incredible grace, launching from platform to platform in the low-gravity field. Their tail acted as both rudder and spring, helping them navigate complex turns in midair. The other students watched in admiration as Reed completed the course in record time. "Excellent as always, Reed," Professor Gray said, then hesitated. "Now, Tom Baker, would you like to try?" The room went quiet. Tom checked his dampeners one last time and stepped forward. The low-gravity field felt strange. Even with the dampeners, his Earth-trained muscles kept overcompensating. "Remember," Blue whispered from behind him. "Slow and steady." Tom took his first jump. Even with minimal force, he launched higher than intended, nearly hitting the ceiling. Several students gasped. He tried to adjust midair, but Earth's gravity had never prepared him for this kind of movement. He landed awkwardly on the next platform, his strength dampeners whining with the effort of containing his natural power. Reed watched with narrow eyes, their tail twitching in what Tom guessed was either amusement or annoyance. Perhaps something more suitable for your abilities, Professor Gray suggested quickly. They pressed a button, and a new section of the gym lit up. "This area is set to Earth standard gravity. We use it for strength training, though most students find it too intense." Tom moved to the new section, feeling the familiar pull of Earth's gravity. The equipment here looked more familiar: weights, bars, and various resistance machines. "Show us a basic lifting exercise," Professor Gray instructed. Tom approached one of the weight machines. He could hear Blue explaining to the other students how Earth's gravity had shaped human evolution. Just as he was about to begin his demonstration, a warning light flashed overhead. The gravity controls flickered. Tom felt the pull of gravity shift unpredictably. Equipment began to float, then suddenly drop as the fields fluctuated. Several students cried out in alarm. Without thinking, Tom moved. His dampeners sparked in protest as he caught a heavy training bar before it could hit a group of floating students. His muscles strained against the restrictive field of the dampeners, but he held firm. "Everyone stay calm," Professor Gray called out, their skin now flashing emergency patterns. "The backup systems will engage in." The gravity shifted again. This time, Reed lost their balance on their observation platform. Tom saw them falling toward the high-gravity section, a fall that could seriously injure someone adapted to low gravity. Tom's dampeners screamed in protest as he launched himself across the room, managing to catch Reed just before they hit the high-gravity field. For a moment, they both hung there, the Deathworlder holding the star athlete safely away from danger. The backup systems engage, returning the gym to its normal state. An emergency crew rushed in, but the damage was already done. Everyone had seen what the human was capable of, even with dampeners. Reed looked at Tom with an unreadable expression. "You caught me with those restraints on." "I'm sorry," Tom said quickly. "I didn't mean to." "Don't apologize," Reed interrupted, their voice quiet. "You just saved me from 3 broken limbs. But how strong are you without those dampeners?" The question hung in the air as every student in the gym turned to stare at Tom, their fear now mixed with something new. curiosity. News of the gym incident spread through the Galactic Academy faster than a quantum transmission. By the next morning, the hallways buzzed with excited whispers whenever Tom walked past. His strength dampeners had been upgraded overnight, now glowing with a stronger blue light that pulsed steadily against his wrists. "They're saying you lifted 3 times the expected weight," Blue said during breakfast, their skin rippling with excitement patterns. Even with the dampeners. Tom picked at his food, noticing how the nearest tables were empty despite the cafeteria being crowded. "I was just trying to help." "Help? You saved Reed from serious injury." Blue's color shifted to a deeper shade. "Though, some parents are concerned. They'd been calling the school all morning." As if to prove Blue's point, a school-wide announcement chimed overhead. "Attention all students. Today's assembly will discuss safety protocols and interspecies awareness. Attendance is mandatory." The assembly hall was designed like a massive amphitheater, with different atmospheric sections to accommodate all species. Tom sat in the standard atmosphere section, trying to make himself look as small as possible. Not an easy task for a human among mostly smaller alien species. Principal Void, a being composed of swirling dark matter, took the central platform. Their voice resonated through the universal translators. "Yesterday's incident in the gymnasium has raised important questions about our exchange program. While we celebrate diversity, safety must remain our priority." Tom felt hundreds of eyes, sensory organs, and other alien perception devices focus on him. The dampeners on his wrists seemed to grow heavier. "Therefore," Principal Void continued, "we have implemented new safety measures. All physical education classes will now have triple redundant gravity controls. Additionally, our Earth exchange student will wear enhanced strength dampeners during all physical activities." Whispers filled the hall. Tom heard fragments of conversations. Enhanced dampeners. Even the basic ones hurt them. "But did you see how fast they moved? My parent says Deathworlders are too dangerous for school." Reed, sitting a few rows ahead, turned to look at Tom. Their expression was unreadable, but they nodded slightly, the first acknowledgement since the incident. After the assembly, Tom headed to his next class. The hallway parted before him like a force field had been activated. Even the floating gas bag students, usually carefree in their movements, drifted to the far side of the corridor. "Don't let it bother you," Blue said, floating alongside Tom. "They're just not used to, well, a monster," Tom said bitterly. "A hero," interrupted a new voice. Reed stood there, their silver scales reflecting the hallway's bioluminescent lights. "You didn't hesitate. Even knowing the dampeners would hurt you, you still jumped in to help." The nearby students stopped to watch this unexpected interaction. "Anyone would have done the same," Tom said quietly. "No," Reed shook their head. "Most species here evolved to avoid danger. Fight or flight. We just have flight. But you chose to fight against gravity itself." A small crowd had gathered now, watching the exchange between the school's top athlete and the Deathworlder. "The dampeners," Reed continued, gesturing to Tom's wrists. "Do they cause you pain?" Tom hesitated, then nodded. "It's like wearing chains all day. They have to be tight to contain Earth normal strength." Reed's tail swished thoughtfully. "Yet you still managed to catch me." They turned to address the watching crowd. "Perhaps we've been looking at this wrong. Instead of fearing what a human can do, maybe we should be thankful to have one on our side." The tension in the hallway shifted slightly. A few students moved closer, their fear giving way to curiosity. Even the floating gas bags drifted nearer, their colors showing interest rather than fear. Tom felt the weight of the dampeners, but for the first time since the incident, they didn't feel quite so heavy. A week after the gravity malfunction incident, Tom entered the gymnasium to find Reed waiting by the entrance. The silver-scaled athlete's tail moved in what Tom had learned was a sign of nervousness. "I have a proposal," Reed said, their forearms crossed. "A friendly competition. You and me." Different gravity settings, different challenges. Let's show everyone what different species can do. The other students gathering for class stopped to watch. Professor Gray, who had been adjusting the new safety controls, floated over quickly. Absolutely not. Professor Gray's skin pulsed with worry patterns. It's too dangerous. Actually, Blue interrupted, their color brightening with excitement. This could be perfect. We could make it educational. Compare different evolutionary advantages. Professor Gray's skin swirled with conflicting colors. Well, if we set strict safety protocols. Soon, the entire class had gathered around as Professor Gray set up the first challenge. The gymnasium split into 4 sections, each with different gravity settings. First challenge, Professor Gray announced, agility course in low gravity. Reed will demonstrate their species' natural abilities, then Tom will attempt it with dampeners. Reed moved like liquid silver through the obstacle course, their tail and 4 arms working in perfect harmony. When they finished, the class applauded. Tom stepped up next. His enhanced dampeners hummed loudly as he entered the low-gravity field. He moved more carefully this time, learning from his previous experience. Though not as graceful as Reed, he completed the course. Next, Professor Gray said, high-gravity endurance test. This time, Tom had the advantage. Even with dampeners, his Earth-evolved muscles handled the increased gravity better than most. Reed struggled but showed impressive determination. They're both amazing in different ways, one student whispered. Did you see how the human's muscles adapted to each gravity level? Another added. The challenges continued. Reaction tests, flexibility demonstrations, and coordination exercises. Each one highlighted different evolutionary advantages. Reed's species excelled at zero-gravity manipulation, while Tom showed remarkable adaptation to changing conditions. During a water-based challenge, Tom had to wear a breathing apparatus. The entire class watched in fascination as he demonstrated human swimming techniques. Your species evolved to swim too? A water-breathing student asked in awe. But you live on land. Humans are adaptable, Blue explained proudly, as if they were an expert on Earth life. They can survive in almost any environment. The final challenge was simple, a cooperative exercise where Tom and Reed had to work together to move a heavy object through varying gravity fields. Ready? Reed asked, their scales glinting. Tom nodded, feeling the dampeners adjust to the changing gravity. They lifted together, Reed using their natural agility to guide while Tom provided controlled strength. Look at their coordination. Professor Gray's skin displayed amazement patterns. Perfect balance of different abilities. When they finished, the class erupted in cheers. Even the most nervous students moved closer, asking questions about Earth and human capabilities. I think we proved something today, Reed said, offering one of their 4 hands to Tom. Different doesn't mean dangerous. And strength isn't just about muscles, Tom added, carefully shaking Reed's hand. Professor Gray's skin showed pride patterns. I believe we've all learned something important. Every species has its advantages and disadvantages. True strength comes from learning to work together. As the class ended, Tom noticed his dampeners felt lighter somehow. Not physically. They were still as restrictive as ever. But the burden of being seen as just a dangerous Deathworlder had lifted slightly. Same time tomorrow, Reed asked. I want to learn more about these swimming techniques. Tom smiled. Only if you teach me how to use my tail for balance in zero gravity. But you don't have a tail. Exactly. I'll have to adapt. That's what humans do best. During the next Xenobiology class, Professor Bright, a glowing, orb-shaped being, had a special announcement. Today's lesson will be different. We'll study various homeworlds and how they shaped different species. Tom, would you help us understand Earth? Tom stood up nervously, his dampeners glowing steadily. The class watched as he walked to the front, but this time without shrinking away in fear. I brought some videos, Tom said, connecting his data pad to the classroom's holographic projector. This shows what sports are like on Earth. The first video showed an Olympic swimming competition. The class gasped as humans dove into water without breathing equipment. But the pressure. A water-breathing student bubbled in amazement. They just jump in. Earth's oceans are much deeper and more pressurized than most water worlds, Tom explained. We learned to swim for survival, then turned it into sport. The next video showed mountain climbing. Several floating students drifted lower in shock as they watched humans deliberately scaling dangerous heights. They climb for fun, Reed asked, their scales shimmering with interest, even though they're heavy worlders. It's about challenging ourselves, Tom said. Humans like pushing their limits. Blue's skin rippled with excitement. Show them the snow sports. The Winter Olympics footage caused a complete uproar. Skiing, snowboarding, and ice skating seemed to terrify and fascinate the class equally. They slide down frozen water crystals. One gas-formed student whistled. On purpose. Professor Bright's glow pulsed thoughtfully. Fascinating. Earth's variable climate forced humans to adapt to extreme conditions. What we see as dangerous, they see as recreational. That's why the dampeners are so important, Tom explained, holding up his wrists. We're used to constantly adapting and pushing against resistance. Without these, I might accidentally use too much force, just out of habit. Reed stood up. I'd like to share some videos from my homeworld too, to show the comparison. Soon, the class turned into an impromptu cultural exchange. Students shared videos and stories about their own worlds. A gas-formed student showed how their species danced in toxic storms. Water breathers demonstrated deep-pressure sports. Even the floating gas bags revealed beautiful aerial ballets performed in their thin atmosphere world. Look at this carefully. Professor Bright glowed brightly. Each species turned their environmental challenges into art and sport. Humans aren't the only ones who adapt. They just adapted to more extreme conditions. Tom watched in amazement as Reed demonstrated a traditional four-armed dance from their world, their movements perfectly adapted to low gravity. Could you teach me that? He asked. With those dampeners, Reed replied, but then smiled. Actually, why not? We'll just modify it for two arms. Professor Bright's glow pulsed with approval. This is exactly what the exchange program was meant to achieve. Understanding doesn't just come from studying each other. It comes from sharing experiences. Blue floated excitedly. We should organize an interspecies sports festival. Each species can teach others their traditional games. The suggestion caused excited chatter throughout the class. Even Professor Bright seemed to glow brighter at the idea. But how would we make it fair? Someone asked. Different gravities, different atmospheres. We adapt, Tom said simply. Like we're all doing right now. Maybe we create new sports that everyone can play together. Not despite our differences, Reed added, but because of them. Each species brings something unique. As the class ended, students lingered to share more stories about their homeworlds. Tom's dampeners might have still restricted his physical strength, but he felt stronger than ever, not through muscles, but through understanding. Professor Bright's final words stayed with them. Remember this day. True strength isn't about gravity or muscle or adaptation. It's about bringing different abilities together to create something new. The day of the first Interspecies Sports Festival arrived at the Galactic Academy. The gymnasium had been transformed into a multi-environmental arena, with sections for every type of atmosphere, gravity, and terrain. Floating screens showed live translations and explanations of each activity for the diverse crowd of students and parents. Tom stood with Reed and Blue near the entrance, watching as species from across the galaxy arrived. His dampeners had been specially calibrated for the event, allowing slightly more freedom of movement while maintaining safety. I can't believe how many people came, Tom said, seeing the stands fill with beings of all shapes and sizes. Well, nobody wants to miss the first ever Deathworlder-inspired school event. Blue's skin rippled with excitement patterns. Look, even the gas giant species came. Principal Void's voice echoed through the universal translators. Welcome to our historic interspecies sports festival. Today, we celebrate not our differences, but how those differences make us stronger together. The festival began with demonstrations from each world. Water-breathing students performed graceful underwater acrobatics in their pressurized tank. Gas-form beings created beautiful storm dances. Low-gravity species showed amazing aerial performances. Then came Earth's demonstration. Tom had practiced for weeks with his dampeners, finding ways to show human abilities safely. He demonstrated modified versions of gymnastics, adapted to work with different gravity levels. The crowd watched in fascination as he showed how humans could combine strength and agility. Now for the cooperative events, Professor Gray announced, their skin showing festive patterns. Teams must include at least 3 different species working together. Tom joined Reed and Blue for the first event, a relay race through different environmental zones. Each team member handled their native environment while helping others through it. Tom carried Reed through the high-gravity section, while Reed helped Tom navigate zero-gravity areas. Blue guided them both through atmospheric challenges. Look at that coordination, someone shouted as their team smoothly transitioned between zones. Other events followed. A modified version of volleyball, where different species used their unique abilities to keep the ball in play. A problem-solving course that required combining different species' sensory capabilities. Even a dance performance where multiple species moved together in harmony. During a break, a young gas-form student floated up to Tom. "Can you teach me how to do a human high five?" Tom carefully demonstrated, and soon there was a line of students wanting to try this simple Earth greeting, each adapting it to their own form. Reed used all 4 arms for a quadruple high five, while Blue created a ripple pattern that mimicked the motion. Remember when everyone was afraid of having a Deathworlder in class? Blue commented, their skin glowing with joy patterns. "Things change," Reed said, watching a group of students attempt to create a new game that combined Earth sports with low-gravity acrobatics. "We just needed to understand each other better." Principal Void took the center stage for the closing ceremony. This festival has shown us something remarkable. Every species has something unique to offer. What we once saw as limitations have become opportunities, and it all started because one human student showed us that being different isn't something to fear. Tom felt his dampeners pulse steadily as he looked around at his classmates, no longer afraid, no longer separate, but working together to create something new. "Next year will be even better," Reed said, their scales gleaming. "I heard 3 more Earth students have applied to the exchange program." "Really?" Tom asked, surprised. Blue's skin flickered with amusement. "Of course. Who wouldn't want to join the school where a Deathworlder became a hero?" As the festival ended, Tom watched students from different species teaching each other their games and greetings. His dampeners no longer felt like chains. They were just tools, helping him be part of something bigger than himself. Principal Void's final words echoed through the gymnasium. "Today marks not just the end of a festival, but the beginning of a new era in our academy. Remember, true strength comes not from what we can do alone, but what we can achieve together."